Welcome to the Momentum Matters podcast, where we have courageous conversations with women leaders. You'll hear about their accomplishments, experiences, challenges, and best advice. If you're inspired by women who have overcome barriers and gone on to do extraordinary things, you're in the right place. I'm April Benetollo, CEO at Momentum Leaders, where we are on a mission to advance women in leadership. Now let's meet our guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Momentum Matters. We're here today with Christine Roberts. Christine is the CEO and founder of Create Your Best Life, and that's creating your best life at home and at work. Christine is an accomplished executive leadership and life coach, and she has just an incredibly holistic approach for high-achieving leaders to attain their very best life. She's an author and a coach and a motivational speaker. She also facilitates great corporate sessions on a variety of topics that pertain to professional development. Her background is she's got training and experience working with the Disney Leadership Institute, and Disney knows a few things about developing great leaders. She also has worked with the John Maxwell Group, equally esteemed in the leadership development category, and has 25 years of corporate experience, some of that managing multi-million-dollar territories that performed with very high results. So she brings that corporate experience into her coaching and her training practice today. So we're going to include a full bio. She's got a lot of interesting things that she's doing in her community and a lot of interesting things that she's done in her personal life. So we're going to include those links in the bio, in the show notes. And now I just want to welcome Christine Roberts. Thank you, Christine, for being with us today.
Oh gosh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So one of the things that I'd like to do, and one of the ways we normally get started out, is just to help our audience understand a little bit about your background. So I know you reside now in the South, but you haven't always. So tell us a little bit about where and how you grew up.
Yes, I am a damn Yankee. Don't hold that against me. I'm from Rochester, New York originally. So I grew up near Canada, like an hour from the Canadian border. And I grew up in a house that was built in 1810, lived, cornfields. I say that because whenever I say New York, people think of the city, but we were 8 hours away from New York City. But I grew up in a house that had been vacant for quite some time. And then my parents bought it with intentions to fix it up. And that never happened. Um, Growing up was really about survival, deciding to thrive and being the best you can be was not philosophies in our home. It was a lot of survival. There was alcoholism, domestic violence, sexual abuse. And, unfortunately, that's the way it was. Although at the same time, I'm really thankful for that because I've learned so much. I've grown as a person. You know, all of the challenges that I've been through, I feel like bring me to where I am today to really be able to connect with others and relate to other people and not necessarily that, everybody's had those kind of hardships, but just really learning about myself, being a student of myself has been a lifelong journey. And it stems from that, kind of feeling like how people can have different circumstances and one person goes one direction, one goes the other. So that's kind of that part of it. I was always in leadership. It's interesting because I was the president of the 4-H horse club at like 12. I was the captain of the varsity gymnastic team in 10th grade. I ended up being the youngest manager in the Morse shoe store when I was like 19. And so those are just some things looking back in my life, coaching, mentoring, and leadership was just part of who I was. Like it's interesting, your evidence of who you are stems from your childhood many times when you look back.
It does. I heard a quote the other day that said, your story is not your setback. Your story is your strength.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I'm trying to remember the author of The Glass Castles. I don't know if you know that movie and book, but there was a lot of challenges in her childhood. And she said, if you're happy where you are today, why regret where you came from? And so, I think about that, and I think about, really all of us, anybody listening, where you came from or where you are today does not define who you can be or what you can accomplish in your life. If you're in a bad spot, now, or you came from something, that doesn't define you. Like every single day, you can create the life that you want. And I just feel so passionate about that.
And that yes, I 100% agree. And when you find that you have clients, and I'm sure that there are people in our audience that can identify with this, that yeah, you can define what you want, but when you keep meeting these headwinds over and over and over again, how do you coach people through some of those kinds of challenges when they're feeling ultimately defeated or like their goal is too far off?
hmm Yeah, that's a great question. And what I would say is, of course, the individual, talking to the individual about what they believe is possible. First of all, lots of times it's stepping back and asking, what's the vision for your life if there were no limitations? I love that question because when you think in those terms, when you take the blinders off, um, it's like it opens up your mind to the possibilities. And a lot of times people, when they think about what they want, it's it's like they're not clear around that. So it's taking those steps back to reverse engineer what you want and how do we break that into small pieces. And to me, like I'm so passionate about what we feed our minds because everything that I've got a thing behind me. It says, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. That's Henry Ford quote. And it's so true. And, like in my own life, I actually got an MBA without going to undergrad. When my parents divorced when I was 16, I got accepted to some colleges. I didn't end up going. I remember being devastated because friends of mine went off to college and I was left behind. And things seemed grim. But then I worked in retail. I became the youngest manager in the company. Then I got into sales with, selling office products. I came to Atlanta and I did really well. And I ended up having the largest sale for the company. But what drove that is I started listening to personal development stuff. Like I would drive around in my little Nissan Sentra with no air conditioning in Hotlanta. I think
No.
people bought from me because I was so pathetic. And I would listen to the psychology of winning, the psychology of sales. I would listen to Tony Robbins, like Dr. Vincent Peale, Zig Ziglar. I would listen to those things because it poured belief into me. And so for everyone out there, I would just say, like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're a winner because only people that want to grow, learn, and be better listen to podcasts like this. And so when you put things into your mind about the possibilities, it's amazing what can happen for you. And so with the getting my MBA, I ended up getting promoted to California, did very well in my career. And I would be at these presidents clubs and I would feel so insecure because people would start talking about where they went to college and I would have a pit in my stomach and it made me feel really insecure. And I would sell it, logically I'd say, okay, I'm in the same place with these people. I have my W-2 says the same thing, but it bothered me. So I researched how to get a degree without going back to school for 100 years. And I was already deep in my career making very good income, and I discovered executive MBA programs. And I researched them. I went to the Georgia State at the time. Georgia State University had the top 20 in the world, actually, at the time, executive MBA. Emory, Mercer, like I went to these different ones, and I started studying for the GMAT, and I started studying learning how to learn because I was like, I don't even know how to learn. I wasn't even a good student in high school. And then I went to these things and I looked around. I said, who makes the decisions of who they accept? And I got to know all the people in admissions. And to make a very, very long story short, I got into the program. I was the first person that ever got into the executive MBA program that did not go to undergrad. And people will say to me, oh, I didn't know you could do that. Well, I was the first one. And during that time, the only thing I focused on, and I didn't tell a lot of people, because people will unintentionally squelch your dreams sometimes. Like, you got to be careful when you have a big dream. You got to be careful who you share that with, because people can, unintentionally squelch it. I only focused on how I could get accepted. And I would journal, I would visualize, I would imagine. I networked with all the people who were the decision makers. I had the money. So my point there is, many times, if there's something that's on your heart, something that you want to accomplish, it's there for a reason, and you have what it takes to do it. And when you stay focused on how you can accomplish it, doors open, opportunities show up, people show up. And so anyways, you asked me something and now I got off on a tangent.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Actually, it leads me to my next question, which is, so was there someone in your life, maybe early on, who was kind of pivotal in helping you to be able to visualize something different for yourself?
Yeah. And so when I was a kid, I mentioned I grew up with, like a lot of just turmoil in my home. There was a teacher that lived down the street, and I would go visit her almost every day. And she would sit there. She didn't have children. Um, but I was probably 10, 11, 12 years old. Like, I was probably from the time I was about 10 until 16, she was in my life. And I would go hang out at her house, and she treated me like an equal. And I was a kid, but she made me feel, and I get choked up thinking about it. She made me feel like I mattered. And she would ask me questions, and she would listen to me, and she would validate what I said. And, like, I look back on that time, and I mean, she was pivotal in how I saw myself. And she really, um, she just made me feel like I was important and what I had to say was important. And so, and now I actually mentor young people, and I am active with, at-risk kids in our community. And because I feel like she really impacted my life tremendously. And I just pray that I can be that for someone else.
Are you still in touch with her today?
I am. Yeah, we reconnected after 30 years. So when I was a kid, she moved away when I was 16. And then we lost touch. And then she moved, and I moved to Georgia, and ended up, after 30 years, found her and met up with her. And she actually has come to our house visiting with our family. And it's really amazing. It's a really cool story.
Absolutely. It comes full circle, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you've had one of those experiences, it is even more important than to go on and do that for other people.
Mhm.
So great that you're doing that.
Yeah.
And you do it not only in your free time, but it's become your life's work. So I
That's so true.
wanted
It's so funny, April. Like, when I was a kid, honestly, when I look back, when I was a kid, people came to me. I was like the person that everybody came to with stuff, and I look at what I'm doing now, and I'm doing what I was doing as a kid. And I think, and I always tell people, like clients, reflect and create is part of the component of the grow method, which I teach. And reflect is like going back in your life, looking at the day you were born, the peaks and valleys, the stories around those peaks and valleys, and like looking at that, because there's evidence of who we are. Many times when I work with corporate women or professional, really achiever oriented women, we can lose ourselves when we become moms and wives and corporate women and volunteers and all this. It's like, so many times we can lose who we are. We forget who we are. And when you look back, there's evidence of who you are, who I am. And so when I was a kid, I was that person. And like that whole listening, I think in our culture today, there's so much noise. And so, you probably saw this back last year. There was the US Surgeon General put out a warning of the epidemic of isolation and loneliness in our country. Like cigarettes have this US, the general surgeon warning. This is what they put out about the epidemic of isolation and loneliness. And my whole theory about that is that people want to be heard. People want someone to listen to them and feel heard. And so that's really, I love that. And I think with our culture, everybody texts each other. Like I've started calling people and really freaking them out. And, I'm going back to like the 80s. I'm calling you on the phone and just going to talk to you. Uh, but it's like with all the types of communication that we have and so much noise, it's like there's not as much true connection anymore. So I think feeling heard and listening to someone is how, I know for me how I felt valued, and I try to do that for others.
That's beautiful. At what point, Christine, did you decide you had a very successful career in sales? And then at what point did you decide to go out on your own and start this company on your own?
Yeah. So, all right. So I worked, business development sales while doing that. And really a lot of that is human behavior, understanding people. So literally since I was in my early 20s, I've studied psychology, human behavior, personal development, using myself, being a student of me, because when I figure out those things for myself, that helps me to understand other people. And so that's like a key component really in any, whatever you do in life. If you learn about humans, you're going to be successful. And so um, that was a big part of it. But in the meantime, I had been writing a column in a local magazine. I had been doing speaking. I had gone through a certification for coaching. Like I was doing all that stuff on the side. And I met the president of John Maxwell Company. Actually, his name is David Hoyt. He lived in my neighborhood. And I met with him because that was like my jam, like personal development stuff. I just consume it like crazy. And that's my thing. And when I talked to him and shared just, my journey, he said to me, if we had a position at the John Maxwell Company, would you be interested? And I was like, oh my goodness, yeah, that's my people. Well, about 2 weeks later, he reaches out to me and I end up, meeting with them, and they had a leadership consultant position. And so I worked there, with John Maxwell at the John Maxwell Company. I was on the B2B side of the business. So I worked with companies, putting together intentional leadership plans, company culture strategies, and did that for almost 5 years, which was amazing. And then our family, this is a whole nother story. This is probably a whole nother podcast, but we sold our house, our cars, gave away most of our stuff. We bought a 38-foot RV and a Jeep, and we traveled America for a year. And we were actually
Wait, how old were your kids at this time?
So they were 10 and 12, and they turned 11 and 13, and it was very intentional. I had met some folks that did this same type of thing, and I met them at a Brian Tracy speaker conference. I was out in California for that, and I just thought that was really cool. And it's like our kids, are with us for such a short time, and that to me was like a great age where they can be independent, but yet they still want to hang with you.
Yeah.
So and then I also read an article about people in hospice, and it was like, what was the biggest things that they regretted? And it was, or if they could live their life over again, what would they do different? And it was always about regret. Regret that they didn't just travel America, regret that they didn't say they were sorry, regret that they didn't hike the Appalachian Trail or whatever it is. So that to me was so inspiring. And that was, there was a few things that contributed to us doing that. And I was like, let's do it. And my husband he's an engineer, so he was not really on board. I had to do a whole spreadsheet for him and put down all of the concerns, his concerns with resources and solutions. And to make a long story short, I got him, sold. And so we did that, and it was amazing.
What were some of your huge takeaways from that?
Huge takeaways was you don't need much to be happy. Like, our RV was pretty big. It was like, king bed, 2 bunk beds, 2 bathrooms. Like, we were living pretty, for that lifestyle, it was a comfortable lifestyle, but of course it was much smaller. We had a 5-bedroom house, and we just pared down, and we never wanted for anything. It was all about experiences. So we went, like 4-wheeling in Sedona and hiking the Grand Canyon and seeing the biggest tree in the world, going to Yosemite and Yellowstone, and just Jamestown, and just doing so many cool things. It was all about experiences. And then the other thing was, you know, there's a saying, wherever you go, there you are. Um, Part of the reason that I just wanted to, sell everything and go is because I felt like life was such a grind. Like we were on this, I was working all the time. I was traveling. Our kids were in sports. Like on paper, we had everything, but at the same time, life just wasn't fun. And my husband and I went to this event at church, and they showed this couple out going scuba diving, and they put the anchor down, went over the boat, and they show them under the water looking at the anchor. But then they keep looking, but then they got distracted. And in the ocean, when you go scuba diving, there's a current underneath. So like a current can kind of pull you away without realizing it. So they show them under the water, and then they look and they don't see the anchor because they got distracted. When they go to the top of the water, their boat was so far away. And the whole metaphor was how in our culture, we can get caught up in this cultural current and forget about what's really important. And that just really resonated with me. And so between that, the, hospice, reading about people in hospice, and, that was just really the drivers to just go for it. And you know what? A year is such a blip in our lives. Like we planned it for a year and it went by so fast.
Mm.
And so that was kind of sad. And we ended up moving back into the same neighborhood where we had been before. And what was interesting is I was at Publix, by our house, and I saw a neighbor, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, what have you been up to?" And I said, "Well, we had sold our house, we traveled America, we were on a TV show, we did it." And she's like, "What?"
Who does
Yeah.
that?
And I said, "This is life, right? Life goes like that." And so, I don't know, it just struck me funny. Like you can run into people, like we did so much in a year, and like it seemed like yesterday that I saw her at Publix.
Yeah. Yeah. And during that same year, they might have a hard time coming up with 5 things that they did. Right. So you started your company, and tell us a little bit about how that is structured and some of the work that you do with your company.
Okay. So when we came back, I starting my company, came back from traveling. There was an opportunity with Disney for handling the Southeast region. And so I interviewed and got hired to handle the Southeast for Disney. I was in their advisory group. So I worked with companies taking the Disney approach to culture and helping them apply it in their business. And then the pandemic happened, and our division went from 400 to 40. And so that's how I started my company. And it had been on my heart for a long time, but I had the golden handcuffs. So when that happened, it was one of those situations where it was devastating. But I felt like, for me, I'm a Christian woman. I felt like the Lord had put all this on my heart for so long, and now it was time. And that's how I started what I'm doing. And really, I wanted to create a program geared to women like me, that were, that were in that trenches of corporate life, and looking at things from like executive leadership, life coaching as a holistic approach. So my coaching is really encompasses all aspects of our lives. And, it's really, I'm trying to think of the right word. There's a new term called work-life integration. So, it used to be work-life balance, which is that's just not possible. So with the way our world is, it's really about work-life integration. How do we create a life where we are, there's times when there's emphasis in different areas, but how do we get intentional so that at the end of the day, when we're on our deathbed, we have no regrets? And that's really my passion. And the foundation of that is like what we feed our minds, like being intentional with our thoughts, raising awareness to our thoughts, deciding to thrive. And then, what do we need to do? How do we take action to create that life that we want?
And so if someone is interested in finding out more, I know you have a website. It's
Yes.
christinemroberts.com.
Yep.
Yes. And I think you have a mindset quiz
Yes.
up
And
there on
a
the
lot of
website.
people
Tell us
love
about that.
taking that. Yeah. So if you go to Christine M for Marie, Roberts.com, on the homepage there is the mindset quiz, which is really interesting. And it's a free quiz. And I encourage anyone listening to go ahead and check that out. There's also a free tools tab on the website where you can sign up for resources and just various things that we put out for announcements, like things like this.
Awesome. And speaking of things like this, you are graciously doing a virtual training for Momentum. And
Yes.
that's coming up on August 14th. We're doing that from noon to 1 Central Time. And so we hope that people listening will be able to grab a lunch and sit down in front of their chosen medium for our Zoom. And so tell us a little bit about the topic for the virtual training that you'll be doing on the 14th.
Yeah, absolutely. So the topic is how to get the best out of others, 3 simple strategies. In life, I just believe that, it's all about that code, the interdependent relationships and communication. And so I'm going to share some things that I learned at Disney and some things in leadership that will benefit whoever's listening. If you're going to come on and join us, it'll benefit you both personally and professionally. So, very, very interesting, simple ideas, but impactful. So I look forward to the audience from Momentum being a part and anyone else who's interested.
Fantastic, fantastic. And as far as the individualized coaching that you do, I know you do a lot of training in a corporate environment for groups of people, but you do
And I do a lot of
coaching for,
speaking too. Like I've been doing a lot of speaking events.
okay,
So anyone who's interested in anything like that, if you have corporate events coming up, we're doing a lot of things like from inner mastery to influential leadership, mastering self, the path to impactful leadership. I just did one that was called Mindset Shift, inspiring women to dream big and create their best life. So that's something I really love to do as well.
amazing. Great. And for women that might want to do some one-on-one coaching, is that something that you do even virtually?
Yes. Yes. In fact, I have so when they go to ChristineMRoberts.com, there is a free consultation button there. So anyone who would like to connect on that and see if it could be a fit. I work with a lot of corporate women. I work with organizations where they have cohorts or have their leadership women come through a program that I have, Create Your Best Life. And I also work with individual female leaders as well. So if anyone's interested in just learning more, please check that out on the website and schedule a free consultation.
Great. Okay, well, we are going to include links to all of this in our show notes, and absolutely looking forward to hearing more from you on the 14th. I know from having personally read our survey results from the biennial conference last year that your breakout session was just overwhelmingly successful,
Oh,
and
thanks.
you gave a lot of people a lot of great takeaways. So I
It was
imagine that
fun.
on the 14th, it'll be the same.
Yes, it was so fun. There was so many amazing women. I was so impressed with your conference. I mean, it was first class.
Yeah, the energy there is really something else. It's one of a kind. I
Yeah.
certainly never did experience anything like it until I went as a participant, and now it's just
Look
my
at you now
blessing
running
to
the
get to,
show.
yeah, to get to host
Way
the
to
show.
go.
Well, Christine, thank you so much for joining us today, for making the time. I know you have such a busy schedule, and we just appreciate you so much and everything that you are doing to help women grow and to live their best life. You're just
Thank
a
you. It's
real
my
gift.
pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks, Christine.
Thank you for listening to our show today. We invite you to subscribe to Momentum Matters so you never miss an episode. And we'd be so grateful if you would leave us a rating and a review to help others learn about our show. Momentum Matters is produced in partnership with Social U. Many thanks to our sponsor companies, including America's Thrift Stores, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama, Protective Life, and Regions Bank. A full list of Momentum sponsors is online at momentumleaders.org/sponsors. Beyond this podcast, we have a lot of ways to get more momentum in your life. Check out the show notes for links and resources. That's all for this episode. See you next time on Momentum Matters.